don't know Edis. Maybe
Uh,
next time.
she's one
I
of those radical Puerto Ricans.
Oh, really? What's a radical Puerto Rican?
She's well, actually, she's a right-wing Puerto Rican. She's a Republican.
So what issues does she lean towards if she's Republican?
Well, Trump, he thinks Trump is being persecuted by the media and by the Democrats and all that.
I don't think they need to be like they're trying to get him to admit he was wrong. He's never going to say that.
No, no,
That
but
that
he was wrong.
but he's never like I saw an interview with I that interview that you mentioned with the Kennedy guy.
Yeah,
I thought that was actually a bad interview because she wanted him to say something he's not going to say.
no, he's not. Not. I know.
That was like wasted energy.
I know. I usually give up when I ask a question and I don't get the right, the right kind of response that I can have a follow-up question.
Right. You
I give
just
up.
move on.
They're like,
Yeah.
"Ah, yeah, move on to the next one." So,
Yeah. But I feel like then those CNN people are doing it for drama.
yeah, probably. They certainly won the
Here.
controversy.
Yes. Look at this. Can you see this?
Oh, that's great. What a cute cat.
He has ADD, so I hope he keeps sleeping because once he's up, he won't be quiet.
No? You would meow?
Meow meow meow. I'm like, go away. Go. My God. We don't have to do video. We can just do audio. That's fine.
Okay.
I mean, I wasted a little makeup, but that's okay.
Me too.
No, it's better. It's totally fine. We prefer not to look at me anyway. I make silly faces. Okay, so I'm gonna turn. I'll turn the camera off, or does it make a
So,
difference?
okay.
Okay.
Okay. So I can see you. Don't turn it off.
Okay, good. Okie dokie. And we'll take a break at like 25 after. Okay. Okay. Hi, I'm Karis Painter. This is Moves Unfiltered on Usula Media. Today, we're joined by Fernando
Hello.
Mendez.
Good morning.
Hi, Fernando.
Hi. How are you?
Very good. So I didn't get to hear your show this morning, but you told me you had many guests.
Yeah, it was quite interesting. I had Angel Ortiz. He's a former city councilman in Philadelphia.
Hmm.
He ended up his career in a bit of controversy because it was revealed that he had been driving for 20 years without a driver's license. So that was that was the end of his councilmanic career.
Why didn't he have a driver's
I have
license?
no idea. That was a mystery. I guess he never thought he needed one. I don't know because he had the plaque that said city council member and nobody bothered him. You
That's
know?
amazing. I feel like this is an old school issue in Philly with licensing and the mafia. That
Oh, he's not mafia. He would be highly offended if you said that to him.
no, but the idea of licenses and who controls what, it's
Yeah.
very old school Philly.
But it was quite an interesting show because I tried to needle him a little bit. He's a loony lefty that I call all my extreme left friends like Pedro Rodriguez and Angel, loony lefties. And then so his idol is Fidel Castro. So let's leave it at that.
Oh, I was gonna say what makes someone super leftist, but that might just explain it.
Yes, yes. And
Interesting.
yeah, so there's a lot of what I call also limousine liberals because they say one thing, but their lives do not reflect those beliefs.
Hmm.
So if you're a true Marxist, you're going to go and share your space with the poor people, and
Right.
so and if you have the power to do it, you help the poor and the downtrodden. But I don't see that from so many of these leftists. I mean, there's a famous business person in this town who also his idol is Fidel Castro, and yet He's lived like a rich man for as long as I have known him, 35 years. So
Oh, hmm.
um,
Hopefully,
uh, he's actually a friend of Angel Ortiz. So that's they're
wow.
they're on the same boat.
Interesting.
Which is okay. I mean, as I said, we are still friends, except that we politically we're nowhere near an agreement. So
Sure, sure. So I saw on social media there are some new interns in the office. Do you
yes.
want to talk a little bit about their work and
Uh,
meeting them?
well, I don't know if I can explain their work. I was uh, impressed with their youth and energy. They
Mm.
are Temple students. Some of them are going for their bachelor's degree. I think one or two are going for a master's degree. One of them is going to be a sound engineer, which actually Christian is undergoing training right now to be the sound engineer for us. So, and one is going to um, move forward the whole idea of having a print, a magazine, whether it's
Ah,
print or on the web. We'll probably do both. And so he comes also from being involved in journalism elsewhere. I think it's in
hmm.
another Hazeltown or somewhere outside the city, and so enthusiastic about beginning to do this kind of publishing. Um, and other people are going to start looking at doing television. Uh, we have a space there that can be assigned to that and see how the technology works with television. So they are going to explore that possibility. So in the future, you will need to have your makeup on to be on our show on television.
Absolutely.
Yes, you actually don't need makeup. I do.
Some of the male broadcasters, you know this, they wear makeup.
Oh, totally. Yes.
Back
And
in your Telemundo days, did you wear makeup?
no, no, I did not. I that's the dark ages. So I was quite young and handsome at that point. I did not need makeup. Yeah,
Understand,
yeah.
understandably. How about the tanning salon?
No, no, not that either. No, no
You
need
don't
for that.
you don't want to be orange?
No. Hey, we have an orange person in the White House. I don't. We don't need to promote
That's
that idea.
it's exciting. I'm always excited for interns who get to be exposed to things that they wouldn't normally learn in the classroom.
Yes, that's true. Most of our learning takes place outside the classroom.
Sure. And we
I
were talking
believe that
about this on the job.
on the job, yeah, life experiences. How many of us are actually doing a job for which we went to college for? You know, I actually did because I was a teacher and I had trained to be a teacher.
Sure.
So that worked okay for me. But majority of people go and say they become English majors or whatever, and they end up doing whole
But
different.
the thing with that is college, I believe, is not necessarily to train someone exactly for one particular job. And that by offering a broad education and social skills, hard skills, that people can then transfer them to different job sectors.
Yes, you explore. There's an opportunity in college to explore what abilities you have. What do you like? You know, you say you take a philosophy course, and all of a sudden you discover that you like to think logically and to organize your thinking that way.
Absolutely.
Or you take a math course, you know, in accounting or something, and you discover that that's your skill. You want to be an accountant all of a sudden.
Sure.
You know?
And it changes. So maybe you do study philosophy and you like thinking logically and you want to go into law, or maybe you study math and now cybersecurity is something that's
Exactly.
a hot job.
I often mention the German model, which they separate. young kids early on as to they want to be in academics, they want to
Mm.
pursue a degree in art, liberal arts, or they want to go into something that requires a hands-on experience and learn to be mechanics, learn to be, they're going to take up architecture or something different. So
Do you
they learn early on to do that.
do you think that's valuable though, or do you think that pigeonholes them? I know the French system is similar, where their
Yeah,
high schools are either humanities high schools or more technical high schools. And for some kids, if they're 13, that seems a lot of pressure to
right.
put on them. And then
Well,
you're kind of, that's your path now.
yeah, possibly. There is an interesting book that came out last year, Range, I think it's
Hmm.
called. And the prototypes were Roger Federer, the Swiss tennis player,
Sure.
and the other one was the who was the other one?
I'm gonna look it up right now.
Was Woods,
Ah.
the golf player. Um, so and he was from the time he was a young kid. He was trained to be a golfer. He wanted to be a golfer, and so
Hmm.
he does almost like magic with a golf club and a ball. You can see him playing with it like up and down. He does all kinds of things. That is a unique skill that he learned from early on, and he focused on being a golfer all his life, and he became the number one in the world and has been for a long time a top player. Roger
Interesting.
Federer, on the other hand, also at the top of the tennis world, chose a different path. He had played soccer, he was a skier, he was a swimmer, he did bicycling, he did all kinds of stuff, multiple skills. And the point of the book is that the multi skilled person has more opportunities in life to succeed. The
Yes,
one who concentrates on one subject has limited his scope.
I'm fascinated. I just pulled up a quick summary of this, and it says exactly that, that we've been trained to believe that start early, specialize soon, narrow your focus, aim for efficiency. But David Epstein, the author of the book, shares how we take different paths, we gain experiences and experiment, and being
Right.
more of a generalist can
Hmm.
actually give us a much more broader perspective into a job or career than
Right.
being so narrow and focused.
Yeah,
Hmm.
and it's admirable in the case of Tiger Woods what he did with his life. He became the number one and stayed at the top. He was unbeatable for a long time until he had that controversial encounter with his wife who beat him up, and that was it. That was the end of his ascendance. So
Sure, but didn't Tiger Woods start out very early?
he did from he was like he could barely walk, and he already
Right,
had a club. His father trained him. His
right,
father was his coach.
right.
Yeah,
So there you go.
yeah, yeah.
It was the same thing kind of with Kobe Bryant. Wasn't his father a coach as well?
I don't know that much about Kobe, but I know he started also as a very young kid to
Sure.
play basketball with the idea of being the next Michael Jordan. I don't know.
Right. And he was very, very tall.
Yeah, he was also, yeah, that helps, right? Because I don't think I could have had great ambitions to be a basketball player because
No, but Allen Iverson wasn't super tall.
no, that's true. But he had unique skills. He was
He had
amazing.
a unique personality.
He was so fast. Well, that's another story. He was really fast.
Yes. Yes. I'm
So
looking up how tall he was.
I think it's 5'9". I think.
I think so too. I now that I'm thinking about this, Philadelphia has had some very unique characters on their sports teams.
Sports figures, yes.
Yes.
Some memorable ones like Pete Rose,
Hmm.
um, who also had an abominable end to his career because
Charles, yes,
yeah, because of the gambling situation. So
absolutely. Charles Barkley. There's a quarterback that
Yeah,
was involved
Barkley's
with it.
still relevant. Quarterback.
That was involved
Well,
with the dog fighting.
uh, oh yeah, yeah. I cannot
Michael
remember.
Vick.
Michael Vick. Yes,
Yes.
but we had a couple of other semi-famous. I mean, a kid from St. Joe's Prep, actually, where I was a teacher,
Mm,
Larry Gannon. He was a quarterback.
hmm.
So
Interesting. So we have a few minutes before we take a break. I'm curious about life in Center City now that some of the restaurants have opened.
yes,
How is that going?
well, it's going well. Actually, some of the restaurants that now have been allowed to have a 25% indoor service
Hmm.
were already offering uh, outdoor
Hmm.
dining. And so, especially like I have observed around Rittenhouse Square, Rouge, Devon, Park, Love, these restaurants have been actually somehow they got the city to close 18th Street to allow them to operate out in the open. So that helps them. And now they also can have service inside. What is more difficult is for many of the restaurants who don't have the same kind of volume
Hmm.
for them to survive on only a 25% occupancy doesn't work.
Hmm.
So the prediction is that many of them will close. As has been said, nationally, about 85% of the restaurants will close. They'll never come back. And I know some very famous restaurants like Bibu is closed. They will probably not come back. Um, and I'm sure that there are more than that. I just know Bibu, but there are other restaurants that I'm sure will not come back.
Hmm. There was an article, I believe, in the New York Times that actually, I don't, that's not correct. There was an article that said that 50, I think it was 50 or 42% of people who tested positive for COVID in some testing that they did admitted to being at a restaurant within the past 2 weeks,
Uh-huh.
which was not good news for the restaurant business.
Yeah.
Um,
But
did,
it's a tough industry. The restaurant industry is very, very difficult. I mean, think of just one item alone. First of all, they are the largest employer nationally, besides
wow.
the federal government.
Hmm.
And so all those millions of people were suddenly unemployed. And many of them are never going to come back. Uh,
Hmm.
of course, there will be new blood because it's a kind of job that most people can be trained to do fairly quickly to
Hmm.
be a server. Uh, they're not going to be the best in a few months, but eventually, if they stay with it, they become semi-professional
Hmm.
servers and bartenders and managers and all that. But that's a difficult industry, and also because of their low salaries. They pay them. I forgot. It's a ridiculous amount of money they pay per hour. So how many of them can stay with that? And so that's one of the reasons many of them did not return immediately because they are receiving unemployment $600 a week. So they said, I'm not going anywhere.
Sure. Yeah, it's very true about the low salaries versus other countries, especially in Europe, where if you are a server, you get a traditional salary and your benefits are not tied to your work, your social benefits.
Yeah,
Here we've made it an industry and a career, but for many people it doesn't feel that way.
right. Like in France, there is no tipping because the professionals are serving you. They don't need to be tipped.
Sure. And
So,
I love eating in Europe because they're not putting the receipt on the table before you even finish your drink. Here,
right, right.
before you even finish your drink, they put the receipt down and then they say, "Oh, but no rush."
I know there's a great impatience here to get rid of you because you're occupying the space that the other customers could come in. That doesn't exist in other countries. In Latin America, you could sit at a bar, a restaurant, with a cup of coffee for 3 hours, uh, talking to your friends, and nobody would come and bother you. So,
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you don't feel this pressure to keep buying. I think it's interesting that at bars that serve alcohol, before you're even finished, the server or the bartender will ask you if you need another one.
yes, right.
And
Yes.
they're almost promoting a drinking culture. Within an hour, you could have three drinks
right.
versus Latin America or Europe, where it's okay to have one drink and sit there for 4 hours.
Yes. Yes. Um, but here is the profit motive. They can see dollar signs as soon as you get up and another person takes your place. That's the next customer that is going to be. And though the tendency also to sort of upsell you, to offer you things that you're not interested in, but they want to get rid of whatever item they have on the menu that is
Mm-hmm.
not selling well, so they promote it. So, oh, we have a delicious salad, you know, niçoise salad or a steak or something that they want to sell to you. So,
Hmm.
um,
Interesting. So 18th Street is closed. Any other changes to Center City that you feel? I would think because of the lack of workers going into office spaces, it would be a little more quiet.
it is, that is. The traffic also, much less traffic, which is good for the air quality because so
Mm,
many of us are walking around, running, exercising. So your lungs are not going to be damaged to the extent that they were before this, with pollution in all the big cities.
mm,
From New York to Los Angeles to here. So
absolutely. I would think that would be hard for the restaurants as well if they relied upon business consumers,
well,
clients to come
absolutely,
in.
exactly. Many restaurants that would only open for the lunch hour because the business people, the office people would come to lunch. Now that well, I don't know whether they're not open. So
Sure. I was telling you earlier in the week that I think in some of the neighborhoods that do have a local bar or a corner restaurant, I wouldn't be surprised if business does pick up, that people don't aren't leaving their neighborhoods, or if they're working from home, they could just walk a few blocks and pick up something or meet their neighbors.
right.
Especially in South Philly, I saw a lot of that the other week.
Yes, I believe that is true. Even here in Center City, some of the sort of smaller neighborhoods that have restaurants, they will be saved from the
Mm,
pandemia because actually one restaurant that was not doing so well before COVID actually was helped by COVID because with the closing of other restaurants, more people were looking for a place to eat and have a drink outdoors, and they managed to have a space outdoors. Not a big space, but they managed to stay open and stay
mm,
relevant because that's the one thing that many restaurants try to do, having takeout service, staying relevant that way.
mm.
So,
Interesting.
mm,
So we're going to take a break, but when we come back, I'd like to hear more of your thoughts around voting in Pennsylvania. I know you have lots to say about that. And also what's going on in Colombia. There's been
okay.
some unrest. So it's been wonderful so far. Fernando Mendez. I'm Karis Painter. This is Moves Unfiltered on Usula Media. And we have Christian as our wonderful sound engineer. We'll be back in a few.
Guys, you want to hear the great news?
Yes.
You didn't quit.
Your video is live on YouTube, so
Oh, it
Oh,
is.
excellent.
yes, we figured
Is
it
it
out.
right now? I should have stopped picking my nose.
Seems to be going well.
Okay.
Okay. Well, that's good.
Sorry about the hiccup there at the beginning. Finally, my first thing without
It's
Listen,
okay.
if you need further guidance, if you need someone there with you, don't be
Yeah.
afraid to ask Leslie or
Yeah. Technical assistance never ask me any questions because I have a tough time just opening the computer.
Yes, I believe that.
Don't wait.
Hey, wait a minute.
Communicate. Make your emergency plan today.
I'm gonna come back in 5 seconds, okay?
Are you in a countdown?
Yeah, I'll count you in. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
I'm Karis Painter. This is Moves Unfiltered on Usla Media. Today we're joined back by Fernando Mendez. We are talking about all things Philly, and we are going to shift the conversation to talking about this big election coming up. Fernando has lots to say about news that came out this week, and I'm curious your thoughts also on the situation in Colombia.
Yes, I'll be glad to comment on that. Thank you, Karis, for having me on your show. I'm always happy to be your guest on this. You have very relevant issues to discuss usually, so I'm happy to contribute my small grain of salt.
I appreciate it.
I want to correct the name of the quarterback from Philly that I mentioned, who was a student at St. Joe's Prep. His name was Rich Gannon. I think I said Larry Gannon. Larry Gannon was actually a basketball player at LaSalle, who was also very famous in Philly. But Rich played for the Oakland Raiders, and then he became a broadcaster also. So that's Rich Gannon. He was born in Philly, and he played here. He was a great player for St. Joe's Prep.
Interesting. Question for you about voting in PA. First of all, I've been part of this outreach campaign to get friends to reach out to friends, almost phone treeing. And yesterday I texted a bunch of friends to make sure they have registered to vote. Are you doing your part, Fernando?
I'm doing my part.
Or I should say, what are you doing?
I am doing my part, mostly asking anybody I see if they are voting and who they are voting for. And I get involved in certain difficult conversations with friends who say, I'm going to vote for Trump. And I say, what? Why? So that's, it's not a way to make friends and interest people.
No, but it is an interesting strategy and one that is contrary to this cancel culture idea, rather than saying you don't believe in what I believe and I'm going to walk away from you.
Right.
To try to ask them questions. So how does that usually play out?
Well, I have a friend, an acquaintance, we're very friendly, who owns a restaurant. So I sort of knew he was leaning Trump. There were obvious indications. And I said, so are you going to vote for Trump? He said, of course. Biden would destroy the economy. Trump is the only hope for this. So, wow, how about all the ethical lapses? And, that's the media exaggerates his faults in that sense and all that. So I haven't spoken to him after this book came out, the Woodward book, but there are more revelations about the way he manipulated information and basically lied about COVID. And so I haven't had a chance to sort of revisit his vote for Trump. But I mean, that's my campaign, is to get people to say, I'm voting for Trump or I'm not voting for Trump. And so he challenged me also in a way, and which I think is fair. Why vote for Biden? What is Biden offering that is different? So one of my immediate responses is Biden is a good person. He's not a liar. He has a very long record of public service with very little controversy. There was something about plagiarizing a speech a long time ago, but that was about it. But he's a man who has served this country as a senator for many years, and then as a vice president under Obama, and he did a great job trying to rescue the economy and all that. So that's my response to that. And Trump has a record of being an abuser, a misogynist, a liar. And so that's my reason to not vote for Trump and vote for Biden.
Sure. And I want to go back to that question about the economy. That's such a huge thing to tackle. And people are now saying that the stock market doesn't reflect the economy, and there's so much nuances. And if we talked about this earlier in the week, if you're somebody who their job hasn't been affected by COVID and they haven't had any family members affected, your point of view on the economy and the pandemic is very different than
Mhm.
somebody who has been affected.
That's right. Especially people who lost dear ones in the pandemic. Now we're approaching the 200,000 mark, and that's the highest in the world. And we're only like, what are we, 4% of the population of the world, or we have 25% of the cases with COVID. So that number alone should be enough to shock us. The number that should concern us is the number of cases keeps growing, and we're losing, yesterday, 1,100 people or 1,300 people died from COVID. So, and in the meantime, the president is distorting the numbers. He said that we're doing better than the rest of the world. We're doing better than Europe, when in reality, France, Germany, Spain, and Italy had lower numbers than we did, much, much lower than we did. I think the highest among them is France with, I think, 30 people yesterday, compared to 1,300 in the US. So how are we doing better? We're not doing better. I mean, there are doctors and nurses still complaining about not having enough equipment. There are many hospitals, especially in the rural areas, where it's more difficult for people to have access to good health care. So, and those are facts that he cannot contradict. And now they're trying to defend him. He's trying to defend himself against the accusations in this Bob Woodward book, and saying that he lied, that he's exaggerating, that this is a case, a hacker, that he's a hacker, that he's trying to attack him. Except that for one thing, Bob Woodward, he didn't have this in previous books, but he has it for this book. He has tapes, recordings of Trump saying exactly what he quotes Trump as saying. So,
do you think those tapes will sway someone either way at this point?
It might, a very small number of people. I think the base that supports Trump is unmovable. And that's what he was able to say. He could kill somebody in the middle of the street and nothing would happen to him. He knows his people. He knows they will follow him no matter what, like lemmings going down the hill and falling into the sea. They will fall. I don't know what is going to happen. Now, I understand his followers. I do not understand his Republican colleagues. What is Mitch McConnell going to do after this? How is he going to have? Well, actually, he's so cynical. He will come back with a straight face and say that he wants to support reforms, and he wants to support whatever the Democrats want. He will do it because he's a chameleon. He will survive this because he can also lie his way through anything. But he's been very cynical right now, blaming the Democrats for the lack of action on this rescuing the economy and helping people who are suffering right now. I don't understand. What is Pence going to do? He's another guy. He's oh my God. The scene of Pence at a meeting when Trump took the water bottle from the table and put it on the floor, and Pence immediately aped the motion. He did the same thing.
I didn't see that.
Oh, it's amazing. You should
up.
do it. It's a video. It's on YouTube. I'm sure you can find it. Pence following Trump with the water bottle on the floor, and that alone speaks volumes about what this guy is capable of doing. I don't understand.
Do you think the voters in Philly suburbs, Pennsylvania could be swayed either way by something? Do you think there's certain issues that matter more to them
Yeah, well,
based on
in the
living here?
previous hour, I'm sorry, in the previous hour when I was talking to Angel Ortiz, and we talked about this issue, um, about Hispanic voters in particular, he said the election in Pennsylvania for the presidential election depends on Black people and Hispanics. If they register and vote in enough numbers to sway this election in favor of Biden, it's in their hands. So he believes that it's Blacks and Hispanics that will do it.
Hmm.
Um,
Interesting.
yeah, my belief is also across the country, I think. Blacks, Hispanics, uh, women, especially women in the suburbs who went for Trump before, how could they look at this guy and say, yeah, I'm going to cast a vote for this misogynist?
But don't you think there's also lots of women that support him because he supports the rural voters or he says that he does? That it's often for some people they like what he says and it's not necessarily about what he does.
It's a personality cult.
Mm.
It's a cult of a certain kind of leader, a certain kind of high profile personality like Elvis Presley, who people believe that didn't die, that was a lie, that he died. His
Mm.
followers who believe that.
Mm.
And there are people who, if we announce that Trump died, there will be also a group of people that will say that was a conspiracy and that people were hiding Trump someplace. So that group is immovable. They do not change their point of view because it's a sort of worship, a cult of a personality that supplies them, validates their existence somehow, and he says all the right things to them,
Mm.
and so they will support him forever.
Did you feel that that was a sentiment when you talk to people and they say that they're leaning this way or that way, that they're pretty set in their beliefs?
Oh, absolutely. For the 2016 election, Perla Lara and I interviewed the head of the Hispanics for Trump in California. And he said,
Wow.
I said, what the hell? What? I use really bad language. I said, what are you doing voting for Trump? He said, well, he's good for my pocketbook, period.
Mm.
And that is exactly what I heard from this guy who owns a restaurant down the street. He said, he's good for my pocketbook.
But it would be interesting to see if there is actually data that supports that. That having, obviously we can't compare what would a different candidate look like to your pocketbook. But isn't that a lot of it rooted in fear that somebody is going to come and be very
Dinner
left,
W. Kelly in
Sorry,
Bell, 6:30
sorry.
at 12.
be very leftist and take away, what they did in communist countries where they take the land from people and sell it? That is that really going to happen to somebody's restaurant? That are those concerns real? Did they ever
Yeah.
elaborate on what that specifically means, that it's good for my business?
Well, traditionally, the, the parties have been identified in a sort of a frozen point of view that Democrats are bad for big business. Republicans are good for big business. Democrats will tax you to death. Republicans will control the economy. They are better managers of the economy. So those are views that are frozen in time.
Sure.
And it's difficult to get people to change that view. And you can show them proof that Trump has not been that good for the economy. And they said, well, no, that's only your point of view. Those are not real numbers or whatever. They'll find some way to dissuade you from your point of view.
Sure. Do you feel that your Latino friends in Philly have different views than your non-Latino friends?
In many aspects, yes. One, and especially that a couple of things about the Hispanic community, particularly. Mexican Americans who've been in this country for a long time and Puerto Ricans who are citizens do not worry about immigration, for instance. ICE is not a concern to them. So all those statistics about people at the border suffering and all that, it doesn't affect them. So it's a minority of us who have come to this country from Latin America, from other countries in South America and Central America. The immigration is a big issue for us. DACA is a big issue. All that stuff. For a lot of Hispanic voters, that doesn't mean anything.
They don't identify with other Mexicans or Central Americans who might be coming here.
No. Very shocking. When I had another radio show that I used to do, and one day they were talking about Mexican Americans and Cesar Chavez and the grape boycott in California, the United Farm Workers that had to fight against the Gamarra control. And I said, wait a minute, Cesar Chavez was opposed to immigration. He didn't like people coming from Mexico, even his Mexican, his friends from Mexico, because they would take jobs that his union could have, and they would work for lower wages. So he was opposed to it, any kind of immigration.
Interesting.
So that was a shock to Pedro Rodriguez. I remember saying, like, really? Let me check that. That cannot be true. I said, it's true. He didn't approve.
Are there other issues before we pivot to talking more deeply about Colombia? Are there other issues besides immigration that you think come up?
Yeah, there is a belief that many Latinos will try to live longer on government distribution of money as opposed to looking for jobs. And I don't know how big that problem is, but it's just that one issue that comes up all the time. Most immigrants, I would say 90% of the immigrants that I know and that I'm acquainted with and that I have read about come here to work, to build a family in society. So I would suspect that it's a very small segment of the population, but they distort the picture. The ones who come here and don't want to work, they just want to live from welfare, whatever the government assistance, food stamps, all that, instead of fighting to get out of their environment. Sure. And the third leg of this is that they concentrate themselves in neighborhoods that keeps them isolated. So they don't need to learn English. They never become proficient in the language enough to be able to integrate into the general population. And so that militates against their success.
Interesting. Fernando, I'm curious about the situation in Colombia, your thoughts. This seems like a lot on top of the pandemic as well.
There was an article that I was reading about this. The headline of the article sort of scary. Colombian protest: death of a man tasered by police sparks deadly clashes. So, like happened here with George Floyd, the attack by police on this man who was not just like a street delinquent or anything. He was training to be a lawyer, so he was obviously a university student, and so they say at least 7 people have died in the capital, in Bogota. It's nearby. It's a town, a suburb of Bogota, Suacha, and the defense minister, Holmes Trujillo, said 5 of those people who died had been shot. So that's worrisome that the police are using real bullets to quell demonstrations. And that is not atypical of Latin countries where, human rights is sort of a sideline to anything the government wants to do to control riots, to control the population. They don't care. They don't have the same niceties that our police are obligated here. Though it's rare, here is rare to see police abuse. I would think, in spite of the high profile cases we have seen, police abuse is not like every day.
Absolutely. It says in the New York Times, this was from today, the outpouring also comes amid years of anger over alleged abuses by the security forces in the wake of protests over police violence in the United States, which have been widely publicized in the region.
Right, right. With the Floyd case, that became a cause célèbre across the world. It was
Yes.
not just the United States. Um, so, so that's what's going on right now, and I'm sure I will follow up on that, and I'll probably have more information in the near future. But that's all I know for now, and I know that the mayor of Bogota is a lady. Her name is Claudia Lopez. Claudia Lopez, and she is supposedly a leftist. I don't know how that is relevant to the case. I mean, justice should be, whether you're right or left, justice should be equal. And but she's complaining about police abuse. The mayor of Bogota is complaining about police abuse. So
Absolutely. It just seems so sad. And in this article, it also mentions that most of the protesters or the people killed were between the ages of 17 and 27.
yeah, young people, college age students. Yeah.
Absolutely.
The mayor Lopez said that 248 people have been injured, and 58 of them had received gunshot wounds. That's the article that I was reading about. And but she also said more than 100 police officers have been hurt. It doesn't say how they were hurt, but I suppose the demonstrations, also the demonstrators probably had, bottles or whatever they threw at the police.
Absolutely. Very scary.
It's not pretty. It's not pretty. And yet, like a friend of mine said that nothing happens when there is a need for change like that. Nothing happens without somebody getting hurt. So the only way you can achieve change sometimes is by having this kind of violent demonstrations.
Absolutely. And that same narrative has been true in the wake of the death of George Floyd and the protests.
Right.
That the idea of peaceful protests is, some people call ironic, because that just doesn't always exist when people are really angry over something.
Yes. But see, our president distorts that picture even. I mean, because he says that this is the fault of the Democrats, and he says now he's threatening like fire and brimstone. If Biden wins, he will destroy the suburbs. You will have crime waves that you never saw before. That's his rhetoric. He says he's claiming that he did not express himself on COVID because he wants to avoid panic. But every day he contributes to create uncertainty, to sow the seeds of panic by saying that if Biden is elected, we will have violence in the streets, we will have crime, the suburbs will be destroyed, the economy will never recover. That's his rhetoric right now.
That's an interesting juxtaposition of two ideas that seemingly don't fit, but I guess in at least someone's mind, they fit.
Yeah, I know. So, but that's where we are right now.
The other issue, I know we only have a few minutes before we need to wrap up, that there's been numerous articles published about poverty and especially hunger among children, and that is this next step of the pandemic that hasn't been fully realized or given the attention that it needs.
Mm-hmm.
And you were talking on your show this morning about homelessness. Do you feel like living in the city, you've seen more of that since?
Well, recently, certainly, yes. There are more people in the streets. I mean, somebody was saying that New York is right now uninhabitable, Manhattan, because the number of homeless people in the streets. But it's happening here too, not to that extent, but there are more and more homeless here. And also, it's just beyond homelessness. There is also mental health. There are many people in the streets that obviously are in need of medical attention mental health.
Mm.
And you can see it. And yesterday there was a man yelling loudly, scaring people in the heart of Rittenhouse Square. And all of a sudden you see police cars coming from everywhere because the man was obviously scary
Mm.
and he's mentally ill.
Mm.
And you can see that across the city. And it has grown during COVID, the number of people in the streets begging for money, begging for whatever you can do for them. And so drug addiction, homelessness, and mental health. There you are.
And those are issues that are not always so visible, although you mentioned that they have been becoming increasingly so. And that does require money, that does require government money and taxpayer money to address.
Yeah. Yeah. I just saw an article that the city is not going to increase our taxes, our real estate taxes, which I'm happy to hear. But I'm sure eventually, not only the city, but the state and the country will have to deal with the consequence of having to spend millions, trillions of dollars on this pandemic. Eventually, we'll have to, that bill is coming to us in the future.
Absolutely.
I see it's a good time to go to Canada.
Canada won't let us in, not even to visit for tourism. We can't even go and try to stay there.
You can't go anywhere.
Although I have to say, I've been to Canada at this time of year. It's beautiful.
Yeah, I love Canada too.
Have you been to Canada?
Yes. Montreal. I love Montreal.
Yes.
Quebec.
Very good maple syrup. Don't tell that to the New Englanders.
Oh, right. Yeah, Vermont has good maple syrup.
Absolutely.
I was just in Vermont, by the way. It was beautiful.
Was it beautiful?
Fantastic, yes.
Before we close out, because you are so political, what else are you doing to help get out the vote besides talking to friends?
Well, one of the things I keep promoting the census idea. And my idea is that if people have enough energy to register for the census and to register to vote, that they will feel that they have done all this, they have taken these steps. So the next step is vote. So I'm trying to promote that idea. If you register, if you answer the census questions and you register to vote, your next step is you have done all this. Now vote. We need you to vote because it's very important. This election is probably, in my lifetime, is the most crucial election I have seen that I sense.
Absolutely. Anything that anyone else can do that's listening, from calling people, registering friends, neighbors, and just continually check in that people are reaching out and making sure that everybody who can vote does.
That's right. Because if you really want to get rid of President Trump, we cannot win by 3.5 million votes in the general election. It has to be like 3 times as much. It has to be such a clear victory that there is no room for Trump to say that it was all a hoax, that it was cheated, that he was cheated. So we need to win by millions and millions of votes.
Absolutely. Fernando Mendez, it has been a pleasure.
My pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
Christian, thank you so much for being our sound engineer. I'm Karis Painter. This is Moves Unfiltered on Usula Media. Until next time, have a great week and weekend.
All right. Great show, everybody.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you,
Christian.
Thank you.
Good
Christian.
job.
Sorry for the rocky start. Thanks, guys.
No worries.
Okay.
Got to start somewhere. And
That's
then